Woohoo! Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Count on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. So do appreciate you tuning in each and every single morning. Looks like it might get up to 60 degrees today. It's like fake spring out there, you know? I guess the groundhog saw a shadow this month. I don't know. But yeah, I am really enjoying this weather. Seasonal depression, real thing. I just cannot stand February, January. I am ready to like get outside, start walking the dog, and it's just like when it's negative like 50 degrees, it feels like sometimes. I just don't want to go outside at all. So it's nice to actually go outside and see the sunshine a little bit. So it's going to be like a high of 60 today. I hope you're doing well. I know that the community is reeling over this incident, this murder. It's looking to be like a suicide homicide. Okay, so this is just totally tragic, and the community is reeling from it, and it's just so sad. And I'm praying for the family members who are grieving for the deaths of Chelsea Lusher, Armani Bennett, Trina Hollings, and Christopher Simmons. Okay, so these are the individuals who died. So they were pronounced deceased on February 23rd. And the deceased are, like I said, Christopher Simmons, Chelsea Lusher, Trina Hollings, and this is so tragic. I guess he was a student at District 87. Armani Bennett, actually, this happened pretty close to Bent Elementary, this incident. And he was just 13 years old. Poor little boy. So the autopsy results are in. They came in like late last night. Preliminary autopsy's opinion, okay, they indicate that Chris Simmons, he died due to a self-inflicted gun wound shot to the head. Okay, now it is also the opinion of the autopsy that you've got Chelsea Lusher, Trina Hollings, and the 13-year-old Armani Bennett. Now, Armani Bennett, I believe, is the biological son of Chelsea Lusher. Okay, yep, so that's true. Biological son of Chelsea Lusher. I didn't want to talk about this yesterday. It seemed odd, and I didn't want to, provide you any details without getting this autopsy. I figured something like this might have been the reason. It's believed that Christopher Simmons killed his girlfriend, Chelsea, and Chelsea's biological son, who's 13 years old, Armani, and her friend, Trina Hollings. After murdering 3 individuals, Simmons fatally shot himself. Another resident of the home discovered the scene and immediately contacted the police. Could you imagine? I don't know, the individual who discovered the scene, they're not named in the press release here from the Bloomington Police, but this is just so tragic. Now, people are going to make this about gun control. I know it. I can already tell by the Bloomington Police Department's press release here. You're going to get people saying, oh, that we need to take people's guns away. The firearm used in the homicide and in the suicide was discovered at the scene under the body of Christopher Simmons. Okay, now the firearm was legally purchased in 2021, but it was so it was revoked though. Okay, so his FOID card was revoked, so he shouldn't have had the gun. If your FOID card is revoked, state law in Illinois requires, authorities to come take your firearms or to check up on you and take your firearms away if you're revoked. Okay, you're prohibited from legally possessing and purchasing firearms. Okay, now I don't know if there was a history of domestic violence in this home. There's also state laws surrounding domestic violence and those accused of domestic violence. We have some of the strictest gun laws in the nation. Okay, here in Illinois. Don't know why the guy had the gun still, considering our Illinois laws. Okay, but I'm going to get to this here in just a second. I don't even think that you can blame the gun. Okay, the individual clearly, I don't know. This is speculation on my part. You don't get your FOID card revoked for no reason. Okay, so the likelihood is very high that he had already been known to, area hospitals, possibly institutionalized, likely. That's why FOID cards are revoked typically. because of mental health concerns or because of domestic violence calls, being accused and convicted of prior convictions. Those are reasons why your FOID card is revoked. You don't just have your FOID card revoked for no reason, okay? So it was legally purchased in 2021. He was still in possession of a firearm despite his FOID card being revoked. Okay, so this is what Chief Jamal Symington says in a press release. Our entire department mourns because of the unfortunate loss of life in our community. We stand for all those who are victimized. We offer our thoughts and prayers. Life is so precious, and we will remain anchored in justice and working with the community to enhance the quality of life here in Bloomington. I commend our professional staff and officers for their painstaking work on this high-profile investigation. We appreciate the community's patience as we work diligently with our public safety partners in the community to gather facts prior to releasing details. This slight delay is necessary out of respect for justice and the families of the victims. Okay. Yeah, I didn't want to do the story yesterday. I knew it was going to be probably very, very tragic. I had figured like that's just so strange in a house. Right. This I thought for sure it had to have been like some sort of domestic violence situation. Okay. So real quick, I feel obligated to do this. If you're experiencing domestic violence or abuse, you can always reach out to your local police department. There's also a 24-hour local domestic hotline available, 309-827-7070. Okay, 309-827-7070. Okay, so I want to talk about mental institutions and how we should bring them back. This is just a clear indication that we need large mental institutions who are capable of keeping patients, like I said, it's complete speculation on my part. I'm just kind of putting it together. Everybody's probably going to try to put this together. If he had a FOID card that was revoked, likely he was known to have mental illness, probably went to the hospital for that mental illness because it had to be on some sort of record. People with mental illness, they don't get approved for a FOID card. People who have gone to the hospital for, 3-day periods or institutionalized for a period, they don't get FOID cards, okay? And they're revoked if they go to the hospital for a 3-day period, which is just ridiculous. It's punishing people for mental illness, and it's like stigmatizing mental illness, which is just kind of dumb to me. We shouldn't be taking away firearms. We should be getting people the help that they need for the period that they need, the period of time that they need. And unfortunately, hospitals, I'm sorry, but they don't have the ability that these mental institutions had to keep somebody for longer periods of time, to provide continuous care and supervision. Okay, there's improved care and monitoring when you open up the institutions. Okay, schizophrenia, bipolar, severe depression, they specialize in that type of care. Hospitals don't specialize in that type of care. They have a mental health ward. Okay, they have one floor, if that. Some hospitals might have a couple of rooms dedicated to mental health. Okay, so institutions, they can offer 24/7 monitoring of these individuals in therapy, medication management, treatment programs. I mean, this is what we need to have done. And unfortunately, the left in the 20th century, it was a movement. They wanted to close up these large institutions, and they wanted to start integrating people with mental illnesses and conditions into society because I guess it's offensive to call people with mental illness mentally ill. Okay, I guess it's offensive. And they wanted these patients to be discharged from these large institutions. The left, it was a movement, and they wanted them to be integrated into society. But guess what? When they did that, when they closed up all of our mental institutions, they didn't do it even properly. There were no outpatient care systems set up, and most of those people who were in these mental health institutions, they wound up incarcerated or homeless. Okay, so we need to revitalize our mental health institutions. We need to bring them back large, and I'm talking like prison, like scale. Okay, not like a prison, but a mental health institution, large ones. Okay. Current mental health care systems, they are overburdened. okay, particularly outpatient services, emergency rooms, because we are in a mental health crisis. More people are mentally ill than ever before. More people are depressed than ever before. And yeah, they lack the resources. And that's not me just being unfair to the hospitals and to the great people of the emergency rooms. They're overburdened. Okay, then they lack the resources. I think we need to, out of all the tax money that we're spending on crap, instead of spending it on the illegal immigrants, I gave you a story a couple days ago about $63 million going to one nonprofit organization to provide illegal immigrants, $63 million, okay, to one nonprofit organization. And then the local nonprofit organization here in Bloomington Normal, the Immigration Project, they received $500,000, okay? So these are just two nonprofit organizations, and their whole goal is to get illegal immigrants set up with legal representation. Okay, it's not asylum seekers, because they wouldn't need legal representation if they have a legal status here. Okay, the legal immigrants, their whole purpose is to serve illegal immigrants, people without a legal status here in the country, and who are subject to deportation. And their whole goal is to get them to avoid deportation. Okay, it really grinds my gears when you total up all of that. The $63 million that could be used to towards a state-of-the-art facility right here in Central Illinois to put these people into these mental health institutions and get them the help that they need. Okay, so there's so many different reasons, the stigma and the accessibility. Many individuals are suffering from severe mental illness. They can't get the proper care because there is a stigma. Like I said, if you're experiencing mental illness and you are a FOID card owner, okay, just because you are experiencing mental illness doesn't mean that you should have your guns taken away from you. Maybe for a period of time, you shouldn't have access to the outside world if you're a danger to yourself and others, okay, which would lead to for you to be institutionalized. Okay, but a lot of people don't even seek proper care because there's a social stigma. There's the law. You can't own guns anymore if you're mentally ill. You'll never be able to own a gun again. They revoke your FOID card. It's really hard to get that back after it's been revoked. Okay, so a lot of people don't seek care because it's a societal stigma. And there's a lack of resources in their community. The mental health institutions could offer specialized, accessible treatment. Okay, and don't forget it. The left and Democrats are the ones who shut down those mental health institutions. Okay, so they might make this about the gun. I think it's, interesting that they included this here about the FOID card being revoked. It tells you a bigger story, I think, about his mental state. You don't get the FOID card revoked for no reason. Okay. Just a totally tragic story. I am praying for those who are grieving. And I just hope that we get it together here in America and here in Illinois, and we start opening up these large mental health institutions. That is long overdue. All right, I got to switch gears. I'm going to be back. I'll talk about the water rates increasing in Bloomington. They increased last year by 33%. They're going to increase this year by 33%. Then next year, they're going to increase by 33%. And I don't know about you. I've drinking Bloomington water. It kind of sucks, kind of undrinkable. Got to buy bottled water, I'm sure, if you live in Bloomington. And your rates are going up again on May 1st. So pencil that into your calendar and don't be shocked by that. Then we're also going to talk a little bit about the city spending over $3 million, near $4 million to get 140 parking spots, which I don't really understand why they're doing that. Because this whole downtown Bloomington streetscape thing, they're trying to make the city more walkable. Like, that's not me saying that. That's the city. That's the whole goal of the downtown. So, like, why are you making parking spots? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It was $28,000 per spot. I think it's long overdue. Yeah, I think that there should be way more parking in downtown Bloomington. Have you ever gone to Grosinger Motors Arena? It's impossible to park anywhere in downtown Bloomington. So, yeah, it's long overdue. But I don't know why they're doing this, because their whole point of the downtown Bloomington streetscape, which is millions upon millions of dollars, they're trying to make it more walkable. So it's kind of like self-defeating. Like, I don't understand why you'd be paying for more parking lots when your whole goal with the downtown Bloomington streetscape is to make the city more walkable so you wouldn't need cars, right? I don't know. I'll be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. Hey, good morning. Yeah, it's shalom, shalom. Good morning. I appreciate you being here this morning. Good morning, Lisa. Glad to see you're here. They ended up as politicians, the mentally ill people that were released from the mental institutions. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Smash that like button if you agree that we should be opening up our mental institutions again. It was all closed down because of Democrats and the leftist movement. They thought it was offensive, I guess, for people to be institutionalized who had mental disorders. And out of all of the money your taxpayer dollars goes towards, okay, $63 million. Okay, I don't know how much a mental institution would be, and probably a tad bit more than $63 million. But this is just one nonprofit. There are hundreds of nonprofits getting your tax dollars to the tune of $60 million. Okay. I just found the one. Okay. And I looked at the one locally in Bloomington Normal, and they're getting $500,000. Okay. Think of the good that money could do if we were to divert it from the illegal immigrants and their, I don't even understand how, what was it? ICER. That's the Illinois Coalition Immigrant Refugee Rights nonprofit organization. I don't even really understand how legal representation costs that much. It was $63 million in a time period of 7 months. Okay, so if we were to do, a few years of stowing away and like just completely eliminating the funding to ICER, and we were just to do that for a few years, we would be able to build $1 billion state-of-the-art facility right here in Illinois, where individuals could get the health care that they need, the mental health care that they need. And I don't know what the hell is wrong with the leftists for closing up those institutions. They closed them up and they didn't have a plan afterwards, and a lot of them wound up homeless, and a lot of them wound up incarcerated. Okay, so the best thing that we could do for mentally ill people is to not incarcerate them and include them with the criminals, but rather institutionalize them for long periods of time. Okay, this individual sounds like he might have had some run-ins with mental health issues. You don't get your FOID card taken away from you for no reason. Okay, yeah, there's definitely a reason why you aren't accepted for a FOID card, and if you have your FOID card revoked ultimately. Okay, so he had a legal firearm, and the state of Illinois probably didn't do their job. Okay, so the state of Illinois has got a law out there, especially when it comes to domestic violence and mental health. They're actually supposed to make sure that you're not in possession of firearms if you have your FOID card revoked. Okay, I think the ISP is in charge of that. I'll have to do some digging on that, but there's definitely government agencies who are in charge of that. If they revoke your firearm, they should probably be checking to see if you are in legal possession of firearms. I don't agree with any of the laws here in the state of Illinois because, like I said, people kill people, guns don't kill people. Okay, this individual having his FOID card revoked did absolutely jack crap. Okay, didn't do anything because guess what? He still killed himself and he still killed all these people. Okay, he was homicidal, suicidal, and was dealing with clearly mental illness. Okay, and it didn't matter the gun laws that we have because one, the government doesn't even enforce them. They don't even enforce the gun laws that we have on the books. Number one. Number two, even if they did, he would have just found a gun somewhere else. He's a person who is dealing with mental illness. He was going to do whatever it took to kill himself and to kill all those people in that house. Okay, whether it be a kitchen knife or a gun, whatever he had on hand, that if he was that suicidal and homicidal where he took a 13-year-old boy's life, there was no stopping that. Okay, except you could stop it if you locked him away in a mental institution and provided the care that he needed for a long period of time. Okay, all right. So I know, pretty pretty rough start to this morning show, but our community is reeling from it. We're all really, really shook up by that. But just understand that we need mental institutions to come back, and I don't know why the hell they closed up in the first place. Got to be careful. Everything is a mental illness. Yeah. We would have to lock up so many liberals. Yeah, well, that's all part of this, right? You'd probably have to lock up a bunch of people. But, people identifying as, and you shouldn't be shocked by this, people who identify as female and they're male, like the suicide rate amongst the transgender community is absolutely insane. I think that, mental institutions by force, yeah, similar to the incarceration, if you are a danger to yourself, this should be the criteria. And, you could have an agency, maybe not like a police agency, but you could have an agency who are specialized social workers and enforcement agents, okay, who, are you a danger to yourself? Are you a danger to others? We're going to lock you up in this mental institution. They already do this. They lock you up. Are you a danger to yourself and others? They kind of already do this with the incarcerations. Okay, we have mental institutions. There are prisons. Okay, now we're integrating our mentally ill people with just hardened criminals. Okay, so there's a difference between a hardened criminal, somebody who knowingly commits a crime. Okay, and does it on purpose. And like is not mentally ill, but is premeditated, and is not mentally ill. Okay, but there is an ability to decipher whether or not this person is mentally ill or just a criminal. So prisons, mental institutions, different things, but kind of not really in the sense that you could force somebody into to be institutionalized. Hey, good morning. Yes, it was a little bit hard this morning to talk about that story, and I appreciate you tuning in, but praying for those involved, praying for the families grieving over the lives of Chelsea Lusher, Armani Bennett, Trina Hollings. Chelsea's biological son was Armani. He was 13 years old, went to District 87, Christopher Simmons. Apparently, at least this is according to the autopsy, it looks like a suicide homicide. So Christopher Simmons killing Chelsea, her biological son, Armani, and her friend, Trina, in this house. And he shot himself fatally. They found the gun. He was on top of the gun. He had the gun legally in 2021, but that FOID card was revoked. Now, I don't know who screwed up, but when your FOID card is revoked, the police, and Illinois has some of the strictest gun laws in the nation, and this has nothing to do with guns. People kill people. Guns don't kill people. Okay. It was revoked. I don't know what agency messed up. They were supposed to, you're legally prohibited from possessing and purchasing firearms after your FOID card's revoked. And at the agencies, I think it's the Illinois State Police. I got to double check on that, but there's somebody who's supposed to come and take all your firearms away. They do this for people who are convicted of domestic violence. There's even talk, I think that this might have even gotten passed in Illinois. I can't remember, but there's been talks at the General Assembly where you're accused of domestic violence and you get your firearms taken away. Okay, so you don't even have to be convicted, and then they'll come take your firearms away if you're accused of domestic violence. Okay. Not sure if that's state law. It's been talked about for years at the General Assembly. Just being accused of domestic violence, they'll come take your firearms away. I don't think anybody's firearms should be taken away. The solution here, like I said, mental health institutions. Okay, they can provide an environment where individuals with severe mental illness can receive continuous care. And we're doing this already, but we're doing it with the incarceration system. We're locking up mentally ill people along with hardened criminals, which just makes it worse. There's a big difference between a hardened criminal, somebody who does this, premeditated, is of their own mind and of sound mind when they're committing crimes. Okay, there's a big difference between that individual and somebody who's schizophrenic or bipolar or suffering from severe depression. And there's a way to, they do this in court all the time, for different sentencing. they decipher whether the individual was of sound mind when committing a crime. Okay, now if the individual is of sound mind, they go to prison. We should reopen our mental institutions. Thank you, leftists, for closing them down. Don't know why the hell you did that. Also, on top of closing them down, they didn't discharge properly. Okay, they didn't integrate them back into society with outpatient services. Nothing. Okay, they just closed up our mental health institutions. And a lot of these people became homeless or incarcerated ultimately. So I don't know why the hell the left did that. They apparently it's offensive to call mentally ill people mentally ill. I don't know. So yeah, I think that they could provide long-term solutions for people who need intensive ongoing care. And the $63 million we're spending on ICER, the Illinois Coalition of Immigrants and Refugee Rights, whatever the hell, they can, stop getting the $63 million of our tax money, and that can go towards a mental health institution and reopening one of those. Yeah, so I'm just peeved off about it this morning, and naturally, we're all reeling from it. I'm praying for the victims' families, and they're grieving. It's truly sad because clearly, the guy had to have had, you don't get your FOID card revoked for nothing, okay? Let's talk about the water rates. Like I said, you live in Bloomington. Well, great news for you. Your water rates are going to be going up May 2025. They're going to go up again next year by 33%. So they're going up from your current water rate. If you live in Bloomington, you have your current water rate. They're going to go up 33%. Okay. And then after May 1st of 2026, the rates are going to still continue inflation. CPI, it's going to increase by the CPI index. For water, sewer, stormwater, and solid waste. Okay, so all those utilities, they're going to go up by the inflation after 2026, but before 2026, they're going up by 33% every year since 2024. So yeah, and I know I talk to people in Bloomington, their water sucks, it doesn't taste good, and it kind of sucks that you have to pay more for undrinkable water. I'm sorry. So the city of Bloomington, they're also getting rid of some abandoned buildings. This is long overdue. Market Street parking garage is going to be torn down to build a Connect Transit's transfer station. And I guess there's going to be a parking lot here, and they're tearing down these buildings. And yeah, the main thing whenever I'm in downtown Bloomington, Grosinger Motors Arena, if I'm going there for a concert or anything, and if I'm going there to shop, there's no parking ever. Now, it's kind of like counterintuitive, I guess, to be creating these parking spots because downtown Bloomington streetscape, they're looking at spending, I think the last number I saw was like near $60 million, maybe like $50 to $60 million. Don't quote me on that. I got to go look that up. But millions upon millions of dollars for this downtown Bloomington streetscape. And the whole thing is to make the city walkable. Okay, where people live there, they work there, and it's a 15-minute city. Okay, you get to stay and live in downtown Bloomington, and you get to walk wherever. That's the whole downtown Bloomington streetscape plan. They're talking about doing a smart city plan for LA now that they're rebuilding over the wildfire or after the LA wildfires. This is like a globalist type thing funded by leftist billionaires to create walkable smart cities. Okay, and it's all about surveillance and watching your every move. Okay, that's not conspiratorial. Go look up smart cities, go look up 15-minute cities. Okay, they're spending nearly $4 million on 140 parking spots, and then they're going to spend like $50 million or so on the downtown Bloomington streetscape. Like, give me a break. Okay, the downtown Bloomington streetscape, your whole point is to make it walkable 15-minute city. Okay, you don't want people driving cars. That's the whole point of a 15 smart city. Okay. And then on top of that, you're going to be spending these 4 million parking lots, $4 million on 140 parking spot, which just seems high to me. That's over $28,000 per spot. That's insane. But I believe it because, by inflation and construction, it's not cheap. So yeah, I just think it's kind of ridiculous that, their whole thing with the Bloomington streetscape is walkable cities, but then also they want you to drive your car, apparently, because they were spending $4 million on parking spots. So I think it's long overdue. It'd be nice to see the parking spots go up. They, of course, tear down abandoned buildings. I think that, I don't know if you could call it a redevelopment. It's more like this is part of the city's job, basic infrastructure, public safety, right? That's what the government's job is, especially locally, basic infrastructure and public safety. If they're not doing that, then yeah, then they suck. But yeah, I don't understand the whole $4 million on parking spot, but in the same breath, you guys don't want anybody to drive in downtown Bloomington anymore with the smart city plan. So yeah, let's get to this. There's a woke governor who apparently thinks it's offensive now to call people mother or women mother. He's getting rid of the term mother. Democrats, I guess they haven't lost enough, or they haven't lost bad enough yet. Okay. You keep doing this, here in Illinois, they changed what was a convicted felon to justice impacted individual. Okay. In some legislation, they referred to, at least in this program, and I remember the fact checkers came out. They were like, no, they're not changing the name of convicted felon to justice impacted individual. It only applies to one specific program. Like, give me a break. You're changing language. That's the whole point. You're changing the language within the bill to not reflect what they are, which is convicted felons or criminals. Okay, to justice impacted individuals. They're changing language. And I don't know why Democrats haven't realized that is not a winning strategy. People don't like that sort of thing. It's like 80-20. Okay. If you were to poll 20 people, most of those individuals are going to say, yeah, we should call women who birth children mother, not, you're going to love this one, inseminated people. Okay. That's what they want to change it to. So I'm going to get to that. Plus Donald Trump, he snaps on another woke governor, a woke governor for refusing to keep boys out of girls' sports. He says, look, you better do it or you're going to cut or we're going to cut your federal funding. So he snaps at her. And of course, Dan Bongino, he's no longer going to be doing his radio show. I think it's going to end right around like March, beginning of March, a couple weeks into March, somewhere around there. But Dan Bongino, we know he's the new FBI deputy director. Today's show is going to break down how he went from radio to the White House, which is so exciting. I remember when we put Dan Bongino on Cities 92.9, which you can hear him today at 11. I remember when we were making the decision to put him on, and I was so excited because I had already been like an avid follower of Dan Bongino on Rumble. And I think back then he wasn't on Rumble. I think I watched him on, like, he had a Spotify, Apple Podcast, things like that, and he was just a podcaster. But then he got his radio show, and we put him on Cities 92.9 right away because he was just a firebrand. And it's sad to see him go, but he went from the radio to the White House, so I can't be too mad. So Donald Trump, let's get to this story. Won Wisconsin by 0.77%, 0.77%. In 2016, he lost by 0.63%. Okay, very, very small margins here, where he's winning the state of Wisconsin in 2016, very narrowly lost in 2020, and then won again by 0.86% in 2024. Okay. So, I mean, it's a purple state. That's what those numbers tell me. It's kind of like a purple state. Went to Biden in 2020, went to Trump in 2024 and in 2016. Probably like a purple state. Definitely not as far left, not as blue as Illinois. Okay. So Governor Tony Evers is his name. And he took a massive hit, and his party took a massive hit. And there's been this vibe shift in America. And I don't understand, what Governor Tony here is thinking. I think he's just putting his fingers in his ears and he's saying, I'm not listening, or, putting his hands over his eyes and saying, I'm not seeing what I'm seeing here, because clearly there's a vibe shift in America. Clearly, Wisconsin is a purple state, definitely not a far, left state. And I don't know what in the world he was thinking by changing the word mother from state law. He removed mother, the word, from state law to replace it with a non-gender term to appease who? I got to be honest, I don't even know who he's trying to appease, because everybody in his state spoke pretty loudly. They wanted Donald Trump, which means and tells me that they believe that there are two genders, okay, because that was one of Donald Trump's first executive orders. And he said all on the campaign trail that there are two genders. So I don't know what he's thinking here as far as like political strategy. Like, this is a terrible strategy to be changing the word mother in state law to, quote, inseminated people. I got to take a quick break, but I'm going to be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat. You living in a city, where do I park my tractor? Yeah. And that's the thing. Most people don't look into the studies, especially, our government officials, if they were to look into the studies here, that individuals don't like walkable cities. Individuals don't like these 15-minute cities. They don't like downtown areas, at least staying in them for long periods of time. They definitely don't like living there. It was a really interesting study, and I bring this up sometimes, where, Americans, their patterns and their behaviors were monitored in these walkable cities and in these downtown areas, where there's bike lanes and, there's surveillance everywhere, right? That's what this is really about. They can, surveil you, and it's like, your day to day. So smart cities. For example, if you go to the same coffee shop every morning, okay, from your, little shoebox of an apartment, and you go to the same coffee place in the morning in downtown Bloomington, smart city, and I don't think that they're going to do this, go this far with it, but smart cities like LA might go this far with it. But there's not a ton of money. Like, there's a ton of money being funneled into the downtown Bloomington streetscape plan, but I don't think there's enough money for this, where they'll monitor, like, they'll have traffic cams, right? And they'll have cameras, and they'll see that you'll go to the same coffee shop every single morning. And on your cell phone, you'll get a ping. Hey, it's time to get up for your coffee. Would you like it Ubered to or would you like it delivered to your house, right? Through Uber Eats or whatever, and then they'll come and they'll walk it to your house. So that's what a smart city is. It's really creepy. It's really weird. And don't believe me, just go look into what a smart city is and what the goal is. The goal is to make it to where you are living in utter convenience. Okay, you are not inconvenienced at all. You don't even have to walk anywhere more than 15 minutes to get what you need. Okay, that's what 15-minute cities are all about, smart cities. And people were monitored in these, Americans, they've been monitored, and their behaviors have been watched. And Americans, they don't like living in these areas, or even like visiting these areas. They'll visit, they'll work there, they'll maybe go to a shop or two, but then they want to go right back home to their suburban life. So there was actually these individuals, they had put up like benches and sidewalks, and the Americans, they did not use the benches and sidewalks that were carefully crafted by the government officials, okay, for this downtown area. They actually walked in the grass. They didn't sit on the benches. They sat on, like, different infrastructures, or like curbs, okay? And that's how Americans just are hardwired. I truly do believe that in our culture, we are hardwired to think outside of the box. We're very innovative, and we don't like to color inside of the lines. Okay, just culturally, that's not who we are as Americans. And 15-minute cities, smart cities, whatever you want to call them, George Soros cities, whatever you want to call them, they are specifically designed to squash that sort of mentality of coloring outside of the lines, and to squash innovation and creativity. Okay, it is to get you to operate in a certain way, and in a very mechanical way every single day. Okay, so that's what 15-minute cities are all about. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense that they are spending all of these monies on parking lots, but in the same breath they say that they don't want cars. I mean, essentially they say they don't want a whole lot of cars in this walkable city. Okay, with the smart city plan, the downtown Bloomington streetscape plan, which I'm going to look that up, how much that is. I thought it was $50 million. It's probably going to go up from that. Yeah, here it is. I mean, that's not me saying that they want to make a walkable city. Like, they want it to be very, very walkable. Final reports. Okay, the overall goal of this program is to make downtown Bloomington more walkable. Alternatives that move downtown from being a vehicle-centric downtown to one that gives priority to pedestrians and cyclists. Okay, so sidewalks. Yeah, I don't understand. They're saying that they don't want to provide they say they want to provide parking, but like I just don't understand. That kind of is like counterintuitive or a direct uh by like it contradicts with their whole walkability goal, right? Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk Bloomington Normal. It's not just me. On their very own website called Downtown for Everyone, the Bloomington Streetscape, this is their number one goal. Okay, the goal of this program is to make downtown Bloomington, quote, more walkable. As such, the city is considering alternatives that move downtown from a vehicle-centric downtown and gives priorities to pedestrians and bicyclists. I mean, like, come on. Like, you're going to spend $4 million on parking lots, but in the same breath, you're going to be spending all this money on the downtown Bloomington streetscape. Like, give me a break. I don't know how much this is going to be. I've heard a few things. I think it's going to be $59 million. This is insane. Okay, so it's probably going to go up from that number even, but $59 million, so $60 million for this downtown Bloomington streetscape. And I just think it's so funny. It's so contradictory where they're like, okay, we're going to spend $4 million on parking lot spots, which we've needed for a long time. I'm not even upset about the parking lots because, or the parking spots, $28,000 per parking spot. That's a little outrageous to me, but I mean, needed. Okay, this is definitely needed. But it's so contradictory to what their goal is with the $60 million. So if you're making parking lots, like, are those going to go away? Or, I mean, then your goal with downtown Bloomington is not to make it a walkable city because people are going to be driving in and you want people to cycle into the city or live there. That's the whole point of a walkable city. Everything's 15 minutes away. Why would you want to go anywhere else? It's downtown Bloomington, right? So, and like I've said multiple times, Americans do not operate that way. We love our suburban life, our suburbia life. We love driving in 20 minutes to work. We like the commute. I mean, at the end of the day, Americans think outside of the box. They don't use the benches. They don't use the sidewalks. They walk on the grass, right? So their behaviors in these types of cities demonstrates that we don't like them, okay? And we operate outside of this mechanical, way of life. People don't want that. So the $60 million is so stupid. It just really is. They should honestly focus on developing the downtown Bloomington area, not making it into something brand new like a walkable city, but let's focus on putting parking there and knocking down some abandoned buildings and basic infrastructure. Okay, I'm not against downtown Bloomington, but I think that would cost you a lot less than $60 million just to revitalize it a little bit, give it a little facelift, knock down the abandoned buildings. Why would you need more cycling lanes? Why would you need more sidewalks? Why would you want to make it more walkable? It's just insane. All right, I want to get to this. This governor, Tony Evers, I had talked about him. He wanted to change the word mother to inseminated person, and he did. He's facing backlash for introducing a budget recommendation. So he introduced a budget recommendation to refer to mothers as inseminated people. And he also changed the word paternity to parentage. There were other laws other words that he had changed, like wife or husband. He changed those to spouse. And this is all the 2025-2027 fiscal period, advises several other gender terms, budget recommendation for this fiscal period. And it's the budget, and he wants to change these gender terms in this budget, and that was his proposal. In other words, he wants to change the word father to parent, and mother, he wants to swap that out for parent who gave birth to the child. So this is just woke-trocious, as I like to say. And set this as all aside. Set aside the morality of it. Set aside how this is so demeaning to women, to call them inseminated persons. Oh, I'm just so... I can't believe. And moms out there, you text me and let me know how peeved off you are, how upset you'd be if somebody called you an inseminated person. You carried that little baby and went through hell to carry that little baby all the way up to the 9th month just to be called an inseminated person and not a mother. It's absolutely insane. But it's just so... set aside the woke-trociousness or the wokeness of this and the morality of this. From a political standpoint, this is such a stupid move. So you're such a chucklehead, Tony. Okay, Governor Tony. This is not virtue signaling to anybody because nobody cares about this. Look at the numbers. Wisconsin is a purple state. There is a shift culturally. Okay, you can feel it here in America where people don't like this sort of stuff. And he's taking the 20 in the 80-20 issue. Okay, 80% of people probably would say, I've got no problem with the term mother. Maybe 20% of people would say, yeah, the term mother offends me. Why are you taking the side of the 20%? It makes no sense. And I would bet it's not even 80-20. I bet it's like 90-10. Who thinks the term mother is offensive? It's insane. So, nobody really cares about this. I like it because it makes for great content for me. So yeah, Tony, you do whatever you want with changing the word mother to inseminated person. But, stories like this make me think that the right will never lose again. If the Democrats keep this up, they will always lose. And they're slaves to this radical ideology. The Democrats are, and I don't know why, because it's not popular. Just look at the numbers. There's no activist group demanding this. He didn't do this because there's a trans activist group out there demanding it. He just did it to virtue signal to no one. Okay, so I don't know. I don't even think trans people would be offended by the word mother. Okay. Yeah, anyway, so, I don't know. There's obviously somebody working for either Tony Evers or within Democrat politics in Wisconsin, and they looked at the political landscape currently, and they said, yes, we are going to change the word mother to inseminated person. And that just fascinates me, because how in the world do you look at today's political landscape after Donald Trump won by a lot, okay? And you look at today's political landscape and you say, yes, we're going to keep doing the same. We're going to keep doing what nobody wants us to do. I just don't get it. I want to get to another woke governor. Donald Trump got snippy with this woke governor from Maine. Her name is Janet Mills. We're going to get to that story here next on Conservative Cat. Okay. Go ahead and smash that like button. Share this out with your friends. Crisco Cities. Actually, I want to pull this up. Mark Turtilli, who ran for mayor, I believe, a couple of times, he put something on his Facebook page, and I kind of want to agree with him. I don't like Chris Coos at all, but the candidates here, I mean, you got Kimberly Cummings. You've also got, to be honest with you, I know this is going to sound absolutely crazy. I would almost prefer a non-establishment pick, which I don't know if Kimberly Cummings is, or Kimberly Harris, sorry. I don't know if she is a non-establishment pick, but here, let me look at this. I want to share this with you. This is Mark Turtilli. He ran for council. Okay, here we go. I'm going to share this with you. Okay, I am voting for Chris Coos. That is what Mark Tortilli said, which I was like, this kind of shocked me. I was kind of surprised by this. You might not be able to see this like super clearly, but I'm going to try to pull it up anyway. Okay, there you go. It's on Mark Tortilli's Facebook page. If you can't see it, I'm going to read it for you. I'm voting for Mayor Coos. And then if you guys know anything about Mark Tortilli, there was a whole lot of beef between Mayor Chris Coos and Tortilli when Tortilli was running against Chris Coos. He's not a good choice for mayor, but he's the best out of the three of what we have. I disagree with Mr. Cruz on many things, but has proven to be effective at getting what he wants done. He has a strong network and he represents his supporters well. Okay, as an alternative, Kimberly Harris has shown similar qualities in her ability to strongly advocate for a particular constituency in a consistent manner. Mrs. Harris has been able to form connections and engage with other legislative organizations in ways that other council members have not. Her political views, however, are further from my own than Mr. Coos's. Yeah, which is hard to do. She's pretty far left, folks. Mayor Chris Coos is very far left, but she's even further left, which is insane. Now, one thing that I liked about Kimberly Harris was she was asked about something in a candidate forum at this union candidate forum, and she was asked about the Marriott Hotel and what should be done. And she just like simply answered like, it's a private company. I don't know if the government should really get involved. I'm paraphrasing, but like that was an answer that I really liked of Kimberly Harris's. I was shocked at those views. I'll read this here on the other side. You're listening to Conservative Cat. This kind of shocked me. I saw this. Mark Tortilli, he ran for council, he ran for mayor, and he is no fan of Chris Coos. Okay, so he ran against Chris Coos, and he's voting for him for mayor, I guess, which is kind of insane, but not really when you read his explanation. So he put this out in a statement on Facebook, Mark Tortilli. He says, he's not a good choice for mayor, Chris Coos, but he's the best of the three that we've got. I disagree with Mr. Cruz on many things, but he's proven to be effective at getting what he wants done. That I can say about Mayor Chris Coos. He has gotten what he wants done, even at the expense of democracy. Okay, shutting down the individuals who wanted a ward system, shutting down the individuals who petitioned the government to serve as county clerk, assessor, those positions that under an incorporated town have to be elected. He got that all shut down. Even at the expense of democracy, he gets what he has to get done. Okay, he's got a strong network, and that's my words. Okay, now Mark Tortilli says this. He says, Mr. Cruz, I disagree with Mr. Cruz on many things, but he has been proven to be effective at getting what he wants done. He has a strong network and he represents his supporters well. As an alternative, Kimberly Harris has shown similar qualities. She has an ability to strongly advocate for a particular constituency in a consistent manner. Mrs. Harris has been able to form connections and engage in other legislative organization in ways that other council members have not been able to. Her political views, however, are further than my own, than Mayor Chris Coos's, and she's not the candidate of my choice. So then he gets into talking about Kathleen Lorenz. And what he says about Kathleen Lorenz here is pretty insane. I'm going to be back with Mark Tortilli. This post that he made, apparently he's not endorsing. He just says that he's voting for Mayor Chris Coos. So I'll be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat here next on Cities 92.9. Yeah, I would say if I was going to do this, I'd vote for Kathleen Lorenz, although I'd probably have to hold my nose. I don't know. What he says about Kathleen Lorenz here is very interesting, though. Here we go. That leaves Kathleen Lorenz. I'm continuing with Mark Tortilli's Facebook post here. Miss Lorenz has not differentiated herself in any way from the current administration. She's been a part of local political establishment for 20 years and has offered no substantive policy statements that would indicate a change in indicate a change in direction. Okay, yeah, so just more of the same. If we're going to chart the same course, I would prefer to keep the more experienced, better connected captain. There is a bigger issue with Mrs. Lorenz that results and her being my least preferred choice, her lack of effective representation. Mr. Coos and Mrs. Harris advocate for a particular set of policies in a consistent way that lets people know exactly what to expect. Those who share their views are well represented. Okay, to me, this is the number one factor as to whether or not I can respect somebody as a candidate. With Lorenz, no one is represented well as she tries to sell herself as a Republican while campaigning for Democrats. She voted for nearly every tax and spending increase while professing conservatism. Most egregiously, she flip-flopped on a decision that led to her casting a deciding vote to increase property taxes. In a preliminary round, she supported taxpayers, then voted against them in the final meeting. Okay. I didn't know all of that. The reason why I would vote for Kathleen Lorenz is because she, Mark Turtilly talks about this. So in a preliminary round, okay, she supported the taxpayers in voting down this property tax increase. But when it mattered, she flip-flopped in the final meeting. Okay. And I guess she voted yes for the property tax increases. Now, for me, the reason why I would vote for her is because she was one of the only council members to, in the preliminary round, vote that down. Okay. Which suggests to me that, I don't know, maybe she was just doing it because she knew she was running for mayor. But let's continue with Mark Turtilly's thing here. Okay. So neither the supporters nor the opponents of the measure were well served. Okay. So the property tax increase. Throughout the years of deliberations about the underpass, Ms. Lorenz offered many protests, but did not change the course of action. Yeah. So she lip service. Okay. Instead, she ultimately voted for the project. I cannot vote for someone who does not strongly advocate for a particular constituency. It is for these and many other reasons why I'll be casting my vote for Mayor Chris Coos. Wow. So that was crazy. I did not see that coming. Not on my bingo card. Yeah, so only a small percent of people served by uncommon sense ideas. So that's the thing about Coos and Kimberly Cumming Harris. They represent a very small portion, I think, of normal, and they are the leftists. Okay, now Kimberly Cummings is on the fringe left of that, and Chris Coos is probably representing like the left to moderate group here, and that's all small. We're talking about the moderates here, and people on the right. There is no representation for the people on the right on the Normal Town Council right now. Absolutely none. So Kathleen Lorenz is not far right by any means, or right. I wouldn't even say she's really moderate. Like Mark Turtilly, I tend to agree that I don't think she really has a set belief system. Okay, and she just kind of goes with the wind here, and she doesn't strongly represent a constituency. So yeah, I don't know. I don't have to be faced with that choice. I don't live in Normal. Okay, so I'm obviously not voting for anybody. And I don't think there's great choices this year at all. There's very little democracy even on the ballot, or there's very little choices. The only contested races are really Bloomington mayor and Normal mayor. Outside of that, there's really not a whole lot of contested races. There's some Bloomington wards that are contested. The Normal Township Supervisor is contested. There's nobody contesting, I think, the Unit 5 school board. And there's just not a whole lot of diversity on the ballot. And that's what ultimately happens in these leftist cities. Okay. There's comes a point where there is no diversity, and you just get the same people kind of running. And there's no true diversity on the ballot. You get people who don't have strong political beliefs, and you get people who have been serving the minority and serving them strongly for years, and there's nobody who really serves the majority, the moderate, and in the case of Normal, nobody serves the people on the right. So none of the candidates in either city are great, but use the least terrible pick strategy. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You get to a point in some of these cities where it's just like, I mean, when it gets to that point, when you are casting your ballot and you don't see anybody that really represents you, it's probably a good indication that you got to move. Okay, so that's my suggestion. You got to move out of the county, whatever the case is. If you don't like your county representation, if you don't like your normal, I would say just move. Get out of leftist cities, and that's essentially what Bloomington Normal has become. It's a leftist city. It's a leftist hellhole, and it's not representative of the constituency. I've talked to people. For example, the 80-20. Okay, the 80-20 rule. Donald Trump has done a very great job of representing the individuals who are part of the 80. Okay, the Chris Kooses, the Dick Durbins, the Democrats have done a great job of representing the 20 and being loud about it. So yeah, we're going to come back. I'm going to read this for the radio folks, and then we're going to switch gears and we're going to talk about the Maine governor who Donald Trump snapped at. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Lots of local things this morning. I just wanted to read Mark Turtilli's Facebook post here. He made a statement about who he's voting for Normal mayor. I don't live in Normal. You guys know that. So I don't really have any skin in the game. I care about your candidates, and I want to provide you as much information as possible. Like I said, Kimberly Harris, she actually answered a question that I think was really good to answer in this candidate forum. I think it was with the unions. She was asked about the Marriott Hotel. They've got all kinds of like protesting. The union is upset with this Marriott Hotel or whatever. And they were asked, well, what are you going to do about it if elected mayor? And she goes, I'm paraphrasing. She pretty much said, nothing. They're private. Okay, the Marriott Hotel is a private business. We as the government have no say in their deliberations or in their contract negotiations with the union. And I'm not going to really bother with any of that because they're a private institute, they're a private company. So really loved that answer actually from Kimberly Harris, which is saying something because I couldn't be further from her political views. But that is the best answer I've seen on this campaign trail from any of the candidates, by the way. But here's Mark Turtilli. He says, I'm voting for Mayor Koos. He's not a great choice for mayor, but he's the best out of the three we've got. I disagree with Koos on many things, but has proven to be effective at getting what he wants done. He's got a strong network and he represents his supporters well, even if that's like 80-20. Okay, so like I've been talking about this whole show, there's a group of 80%ers. Okay, those are your moderates. Those are people who don't agree with radical left ideology. But Mayor Chris Koos, Kimberly Cummings, they represent the 20% loudly and proudly. Okay. Mark Turtilli goes on. He goes, as an alternative, Kimberly Harris has shown similar qualities in her ability to strongly advocate for a particular constituency in a consistent manner. Harris has been able to form connections and engage with other legislative organizations in ways that other council members have not. Her political views, however, are further from my own than Chris Koos, than Mayor Koos. So she is not my candidate of choice. So clearly, because she's a little further left than Mayor Chris Koos. He's pretty far left, folks. Now that leaves Kathleen Lorenz, and this is what Mark Turtilli says. He says, Miss Lorenz has not differentiated herself in any way from the current administration. She's been a part of a local political establishment for 20 years and has offered no substantive policy statements that would indicate a change in direction. If we're going to chart the same course, I would prefer to keep the more experienced, better connected captain. There's a bigger issue with Kathleen Lorenz that results in her being my least preferred choice, her lack of effective representation. Mr. Koos and Mrs. Harris advocate for a particular set of policies. They're crappy policies, and I don't agree with them. That's me saying that, not Mark Turtilli. But policies in a consistent way that let people know exactly what to expect. Those who share their views are well represented. To me, this is the number one factor as to whether or not I can respect someone as a candidate. Do you represent strongly? Do you represent a group of people strongly? And he says this, with Ms. Lorenz, no one is represented well. She has tried to sell herself as a Republican while campaigning for Democrats. She voted for nearly every tax increase. Tax and spending increase while professing conservatism. Most egregiously, she flip-flopped. Now, this would be the decision why I might be voting for Kathleen Lorenz. Okay, so here's what Mark Turtilli says, and then I'll provide you some my commentary here. He says, most egregiously, she flip-flopped on a decision that led to her casting a deciding vote to increase property taxes. In a preliminary round, she supported taxpayers, then voted against them in the final meeting. So the reason why that I saw, originally she voted against the property tax increases. Nobody else really was doing that. I think maybe it was I don't know, it was a couple of council members who I think voted against that originally in the preliminary round. Kimberly Harris probably definitely voted for it. I wouldn't doubt it, but I'd have to look up that vote. But ultimately, it didn't really matter in the end because she flip-flopped on it and voted against the taxpayers in the final meeting. Okay. Like I said, there is no reason. Kathleen Lorenz, she had said that she voted against her originally. She was in this candidate forum, and I'm paraphrasing. She had said something like, we don't need this excessive amount of money. We don't even know what we're going to be doing with this money. There's no reason to increase the property taxes. So the property taxes are always going to increase. They're always going to get more revenue because naturally your property tax values, your tax assessment is going to go up. Okay, so the government is in the business of always taking more money. Now, they could lower the property tax levy and not take as much money from you, and they could lower that property tax levy to a point where they're, because your property values have gone up, where they aren't getting as much revenue. Okay, but they'll never do that. This was a property tax rate where they increased it. And now they're getting even more gobs of money. Okay, the revenue was already going to come in more revenue from the previous fiscal year, because the property values went up. But they went even further than that. And she said, look, we got this surplus of cash essentially that we don't even know what we're really doing with. So I liked that answer from Lorenz. That's a conservative answer. Hey, we didn't even know what we were doing with this money. That's why I voted against it. But ultimately, it doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, in the final meeting, at least according to Mark Totilli, she voted against the taxpayers. Okay, so he goes on in his statement. He says, neither the supporters nor the opponents of the measure were well served. Okay, throughout the years of deliberations about the underpass, Ms. Lorenz offered many protests, spoke out against it, but did little to change the course of action. Okay, so she spoke out against it, but no changes. Instead, she ultimately voted for the project. Okay, I cannot vote for someone who does not strongly advocate for a particular constituency. It is for these reasons and many other reasons why I will be casting my vote for Mayor Chris Goose. Okay, so that was Mark Totilli. I wanted to share that with you. I thought that was kind of interesting. There is an election, folks, April 1st. Early voting is open. Very low turnout so far. I think I read something like over the course of 3 or 4 days. It's probably up a little bit by now, 28 people in total, which is insane. So very low turnout. So there's not a whole lot of contested races this go around, April 1st, 2025. There's contested races in both Bloomington and mayoral races, but that's about it. And then the normal township supervisor, you've got Crystal Label and Chad Burke going up for those spots. As far as, Unit 5 school board, they're going to stay the same. There's not a whole lot of diversity on the ballot either. We already know that Crystal Label, she's running for normal township supervisor. She's also the McLean County board member. There's not a ton of diversity that you see, even for Bloomington Council. Okay, you've got the McLean County board member, Eric Hansen, and Cody Hendricks. Cody Hendricks is running for Bloomington mayor. There's not a ton of diversity because Eric Hansen, and then you've got Cody Hendricks. They're living in the same, they're together, spouses, I think. And there's not diversity. Okay, there's no diversity. Abby Scott and Corey Byrne, they're together in the same household, and they have this obviously probably same ideology. And there's just no diversity. And that's what happens in leftist cities, blue hellholes. You get zero diversity on your ballot. And when that happens, I've always suggested to you, that's the point where you got to move. If you don't like anybody on your ballot, you don't see anybody who represents you, that's the point where you got to move, and you just got to go to a red city or a red town. Okay, red community. All right. I want to get to this governor. I've been wanting to get to this all morning. Trump. He invited a bipartisan group of governors to the White House, and amongst them is Democrat Maine Governor Janet Mills. Okay, now the governor got snippy, but Donald Trump got snippy right back with this woman. Okay, so she got snippy with Donald Trump, and she's refusing to enforce his executive order where he bans boys from participating in girls' sports. Okay, so like I said, Democrats, it seems like they never, ever want to win again. This is an 80-20 issue. Okay, 80% of people probably agree that little girls shouldn't be competing with little boys. Okay, but that didn't stop her from, not enforcing this executive order, because Democrats, they are all about representing that 20%, the fringe, and they represent those people very, very loudly, like Mayor Chris Coons and Kimberly Harris. They represent the 20 percenters, okay? The 80 percenters, they don't have any representation in Bloomington Normal. The normal people, the people who, excuse my pun, the normal people, the moderates, and even anybody who's right of moderate, okay? They have no representation in this community at all. It's all the 20 percenters who go out and vote in these low voter turnout elections. Okay, that's how they keep winning, is because this low voter turnout, the radical left, they always go out to vote. Okay, and if they always go out to vote and you don't, as the moderate who has a family who doesn't live for politics, and I don't blame you, but if you don't go out and vote, the 20%, they're the loudest, they're going to keep winning. Okay, and that is the strategy Chris Coons has taken his entire, he's probably been mayor longer than I've been alive. Okay, and he knows that the voter turnout for municipal elections is low. He knows if he gets his base riled up, they'll go out and vote for him, and he'll ultimately take that election every single year. Okay, so that's how he keeps winning. And Democrats, they love the 20 percenters. They love the 20 percenters. So Janet Mills decided that instead of working together in this bipartisan group of governors, she was going to take a snipe at the EO that Donald Trump had signed. And she threatened that she was going to go see Donald Trump in court, and that she'd see him in court. Donald Trump essentially responded, okay, bet, I'll see you in court. You'll lose. So take a listen to this. This is Donald Trump. Here we go.
The NCAA has complied immediately, by the way. That's good. But I understand Maine. Is Maine here, the governor of Maine? Well, are you not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with state and federal laws.
We are the federal law. Well, you better do it. You better do it, because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't. And by the way, your population, even though it's somewhat liberal, although I did very well there, your population doesn't want men playing in women's sports. So you better comply, because otherwise you're not getting any federal funding. Every state, good, I'll see you in court. I look forward to that. That should be a real easy one. And enjoy your life after governor, because I don't think you'll be in elected politics. The NCAA.
Okay, like I said, I think that the left is just never going to win an election again. There is a change. There's a cultural shift. There's something happening where people are done with the radical left. And I don't know why the Democrats are slaves to these radical leftists. Take a listen to this. Now, this was on CNN, and they talk about that 80-20 thing that I was talking about earlier in the show. They keep talking about this 80-20 thing. Scott Jennings on CNN brought this up a few weeks ago, I think. So take a listen to this. Here we go.
So not illegal. You don't like the politics of it. I'll give you the other side. This is radical transparency on these USAID grants and other parts of the government that typically operate in an opaque fashion. And plenty of law degrees here. I'll give you the political view. The American people elected Donald Trump because they thought he was going to be a sledgehammer against this government and against the out-of-control bureaucracy. And Elon Musk is the instrument of the destruction. And there is nothing bad about the politics of this right now, about going through the government and reporting to the American people, did you know your money's going here? Did you know your money's going there? It's all upside for Trump.
Reproach where he shouldn't even be questioned about.
Yeah. He's questioned by his boss, the President of the United States.
Is he?
Yeah.
No, but they don't even know what he's doing. Yeah, that's the problem.
Trump said he would have authorization to do what he needed to do.
The New York Times is reporting.
Okay, so he talks about this 80-20 issues, and he is like, this is like his superpower here, folks, where he's got the 80-20 issues, and Donald Trump takes the 80 side, okay? And that resonates with way more girls not being into women, or girls and boys not competing together. That is an 80 issue. That is an 80 side of this issue. Most people, most Americans don't like boys being allowed to compete in girls sports, okay? I don't know what's so complicated about that. Now, there are people in America who believe in a biological reality, and they believe that boys have a biological advantage over girls in athletics, and it's unfair for them to compete against girls. Okay. This is effectively robbing girls of opportunities like scholarships and to discover who they are as themselves, to learn, grow, and develop in sports. And we all, as Americans, you've got a daughter, you've got a sister, okay, you got a girlfriend, okay, you know that you have a biological advantage over those females in your life, and you know how messed up this is. They are an anti-science party, the Democrats, and they'll call you transphobic because you don't want your daughters exposed to wieners in the locker room, okay? I mean, I hate to say that, but that's just the reality of this. They are anti-science, woke Democrats, and they have grown so toxic that they aren't even really reaching with these issues 67% of the less insane Democrats. Okay, so I want to play this clip. This is also CNN, and they talk about how Trump's ban on transgender women so men, from women's sports is probably the most popular thing he's done. Even Democrats, the less insane ones, are for this. Okay, so let's take a listen. Here we go.
I think these numbers are really illuminating on this topic because I just think there's such a clear trend among the American public. So transgender female athletes in women's sports, only 18% of the country says that they should be, in fact, allowed to participate in women's sports. Compare this to the opposition. I mean, my goodness gracious, 79%. You rarely get 79% of the country to agree on anything, but they do, in fact, agree on the idea of opposing transgender female athletes in women's sports. But it's not just the here and now, Laura. It's not just the here and now. What we're actually seeing is a trend on this particular issue, and it's going in the direction of opposition. So take a look here. Okay, transgendered female athletes, and amongst those Americans who oppose them in women's sports, back in 2021, it was 62%. A majority, but, not anywhere close to a ginormous majority, right? A clear majority, but not a ginormous majority. But then again, you look here in 2025, you see it at 79%. So it's not just that the majority of Americans are opposed to transgender female athletes in women's sports. It's that the opposition has become considerably larger in just the last 4 years.
How does this break down across party lines?
Yeah. So, when you get 79% of Americans to agree on anything, in this case, opposition to transgender female athletes in women's sports, you got to believe that it's the majority across all parties. And that's, in fact, what we see. So transgender female athletes, again, opposing them in women's sports. You get 67% of Democrats, so 2/3 there. You get 64% of independents, so you get about 2/3 there. And then look at this, near uniformity among Republicans, 94% of Republicans in opposition. You rarely get 67% of Democrats and 94% of Republicans to agree on anything, but they do on this particular issue. But it's not just that Republicans are in an opposition, it's the strength of that opposition. Okay, Republicans who strongly want to ban transgender female athletes from women's sports, get this, it's 84% who strongly want to ban them. And that is actually larger than the amount of Republicans who strongly want to deport all immigrants in America who are here illegally. So that just gives you an understanding of how strong the opposition is among Republicans. It is really strong when it comes to banning transgender female athletes from women's sports, Laura.
Okay, so even the less crazy Democrats are pro banning transgender women from sports. I think I played that wrong clip, the 80-21 or the 80-20 clip of Scott Jennings. I want to play that clip here on the other side. You're listening to Conservative Cat. I'm going to be back. We're going to talk about the Maine governor still. There are some things in Maine where there was this high school track star in Maine ranking 172 in the 5K. As a freshman, okay, then he over the summer decided to transition to a girl, okay, and then as a sophomore, she became the fastest sophomore in the region. Okay, so besting the second fastest sophomore girl by 80 seconds. Okay, so what are the odds of that? Very, very high, because guess what? He's a boy. He's biological advantage over this girl. Janet Mills, she got chirpy with Donald Trump. over this EO, and he shot her down. He said, "Look, I'll see you in court." He goes, "You better be following this federal order, this executive order, otherwise you're going to get your federal cutting spent or cut." Okay, so I'm not going to be sending you money anymore to your state. So we're going to get to all of this here next. I do want to play that 80-20 clip. I think I played the wrong clip for you, Scott Jennings, talking about how Trump just dominates. He just dominates with this 80 side. Okay, take an issue. 80% of people agree on this issue, and he resonates with those people more than the 20 percenters. But for some odd reason, the Democrats keep going to the 20 percenters on this issue, and they just go. They would fight until they're blue in the face for this 20 percenter, the people who are 20% on an issue. So I'll be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk Bloomington Normal. Whoa. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. I was unfair to you. I did not play the correct clip. Scott Jennings, 80-20 issues. That's what he talks about here, where Trump is on the 80 side. And, you know, that 80 side, it resonates with more Americans. So he takes the 80% on this issue. Of boys not being allowed to compete in women's sports. 80% of Americans believe that, yes, that is wrong. Boys should not be competing against little girls. Little boys shouldn't be competing against girls, and men shouldn't be competing against women because they have an obvious biological advantage over women. Take a listen to Scott Jennings here. This is the right clip. Sorry. I make mistakes too, and I'm willing to admit that, folks. Here you go. Take a listen.
He's describing what is currently the dumbest strategy in politics, which is Democrats taking the 20% side of every 80-20 issue in America. USAID, people want this pared down. They want it streamlined. They want to know where the money is going. Democrats have a meltdown. Today, Donald Trump signs executive order on keeping boys out of girls' sports. Democrats take the 20 side of that issue as well. All these issues, this is like Trump's superpower, finding a bunch of 80-20 issues, getting on the 80, and everybody who's sort of reflexively against him gets on the 20. And now the Democratic Party has like a 31% approval rating. This is why.
I don't know.
This is why. Yeah. So the clip that I had played over earlier, I was talking about, hey, Elon's weapon of destruction, okay, against the radical left here is to point this out, point out the fact that a lot of Americans want government transparency. A lot of Americans want their tax dollars to go where they should go, not through the USAID to go, fund condoms in Gaza or whatever the hell they were funding. Actually, there was a federal program that was funding not cancer research, but research surrounding how to best ask cancer patients what their sexual orientation was, as if that matters. So we should be funding cancer research, not how best to ask somebody if they're straight or gay. Okay, so that was the clip I had played earlier. How this is their weapon of destruction. This is their sledgehammer. Just use it. The people voted us to do this. The people voted us to cut the out of control bureaucracy and the out of control spending of your taxpayer dollars on issues that you don't care about. Okay, we are going to get to quite a lot here in the 7 o'clock hour. If you live in Bloomington, there's news. You're going to be paying more for your water rates, by the way, 33%. It's going to go up May 1st, so be prepared for that. And they're also spending money on 140 parking lots. Okay, that's going to be to the tune of $4 million, which kind of is counterintuitive to their whole downtown Bloomington streetscapes plan. So we're going to get to all of that here in just a little bit. But first, Rick Johnson from Tax and Accounting Plus joins me for Tax Tip Tuesday. I love Tax Tip Tuesdays. It's my favorite time of the week. He's from Tax and Accounting Plus, and he's going to talk with me a little bit, I think, about child tax credits. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Child tax credit and other child tax credit or additional child tax credit.
Okay. So let's start with the first child tax credit. What do we need to know going into the tax season this year about the child tax credit?
Okay. Child tax credit and additional child tax credit. The credit, and again, my favorite word, credits. Credit's good. So much better than deductions. So in 24, the child tax credit is up to $2,000 per qualifying child age under 17. Got to be under 17. It also has a refundable component of up to $1,700 additional child tax credit. But the way that works is you can get $2,000 of child tax credit and it will wipe out your tax or up to the amount of your tax. And most credits, that's the way they work. They take care of your tax, but a lot of them aren't refundable. So if you wipe out your tax with a portion of your child tax credit, up to $1,700 can be carried over and make it a refundable credit. In other words, it will actually add on to your refund and give you $1,700 more than if besides just wiping out your tax. So there is a limit. And there's always phase outs. We'll talk a little bit more on that in a second, but there's a limit to 15% of your earned income above $2,500 or the excess of the taxpayer's Social Security taxes for the year over the earned income credit, with 3 or more qualifying children. So it's a little calculation. You got to figure out that amount, but still fantastic credit. Here's something that's a clue. Most people who file married filing separate lose the ability to take credits, but not with the child tax credit. The child tax credit is still available if you're filing married filing separate and you pass the rules for children of divorced or separated parents. So thereby only the non-custodial parent could then claim the child tax credit. So what that means in a nutshell is if you're claiming the child, okay, then you get the child tax credit. Doesn't matter if they're living with you or not living with you, whoever claims them gets it. So that's a good thing. Now, there's also a phase out. And I told you we're going to talk about that. It's not a bad one, but almost everything each Tuesday when we speak, the credits, deductions, whatever, there's always a phase out, which means that as your income goes up, then the amount of your credit can go down. But in the case of the child tax credit, it's not bad. It's pretty good. That limit is $400,000 for a married filing joint couple and $200,000 for all other filing statuses. So when you reach those levels, okay, then you will start losing $50 per $1,000 that you go up and over. So, for example, if you had $400,001 and $401,000 for this child tax credit, then you would lose 50. So you'd go from 2,000 down to 1950. And every thousand that goes above that level, you're going to lose $50 until it's gone. Okay. Now, here's one good thing about this as well. There's this little credit called credit for other dependents. Okay. And that is a $500 non-refundable credit. Now, there it is right there. Non-refundable. None of it can be used to increase your refund as far as if you wipe out the tax. If you only need $100 to wipe out your tax, you can use the 100. You don't get to do 400 anymore. Okay. So, and that's for qualifying children of the child tax credit and each qualifying relative. The adjusted gross income limits for the credit for other dependents are pretty much the same as the child tax credit. You got to be a U.S. citizen, you got to be a U.S. national or a U.S. resident alien. This means that you can be able to claim your child if they are over 17 for this particular credit. This is the $500 credit. Doesn't work. Got to be under 17 or under. Excuse me. When going for the $2,000 credit, but the $500 credit, you can be 17 or over. So you got to be under for the 2, over for the 5. All righty. Now, one last piece here. You got a requirement that you got to have a Social Security card. Okay. Some people are not able to get Social Security cards. And if you can't get your Social Security card, then they have what they call an ITIN. Okay. An ITIN stands for Individual Taxpayer Identification Number. And this number is what the IRS will give you in place of your Social Security card if you don't qualify to get a Social Security card, which will then allow you to get this $500 credit for the other dependents. Okay. If your child live with you in the United States and has an ITIN, but not a Social Security number, then they and you get it issued by the due date of your return, and then you can able to claim this credit. Keep in mind that if your child has an ITIN, and on that card, or your on this ITIN card it says not valid for employment, you got to get rid of that. You got to go talk to the Social Security Administration and ask them to take that off of there if now you do qualify. So that is the child tax credit, the additional child tax credit, and the credit for other dependents.
Okay. Now, what you're talking about here, for our listeners and for me, you're just talking about the federal child tax credits. Okay. Now, if there's Illinois, and I know this was recently passed, and I don't think that one is as glamorous. Like this one is pretty good, from what I'm understanding and from our conversation. I'm not too sure, but when they go to file like their Illinois taxes, there's even a child tax credit there, right? Or no?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure that's what it's called. I'd tell you what, I'll be honest with you, I'll have to double check and look.
Okay. Yeah. Well,
You might be throwing one over on me. So, but that's okay.
I confused you. Well, that's okay. We'll get together. I was just curious because it would make sense. Because so on your Illinois tax, you file federal and then you file Illinois, and Illinois might provide whether it's a child tax credit or other tax credits as well.
Well,
That's
a di-
separate.
yes. Well, difference between the federal and the state is that you do not get a dependency deduction, okay, or any type of exemption, because that was taken out when Trump's first go around. They
Mhm.
changed back in 18, I believe. They changed all these rules and regulations. It was the biggest change in the IRS code in over 3 decades. So,
Wow.
but there's a limitation on that. It's at 25. At the end of 25, it's over. So they're going to have to do something here this year. They're going to continue on, or they're going to change it, whatever. But in Illinois, you still get an exemption, okay, for your children or for you, and that's like 27, 25 a person, and then you get some additional if you're over age 65. So now you may be referring to that, but I'll tell you what, I will double check that, and we will discuss that next week.
Okay, that sounds great. Well, you guys are going to want to tune in for that. This has been Tax Tip Tuesday with Rick Johnson from Tax and Accounting Plus. Rick Johnson, as always, how do we find out more about Tax and Accounting Plus, and how do we get help from the experts?
Okay, Tax and Accounting Plus is located at 501 North Clinton here in Bloomington, Illinois. Our phone number is 309-827-4010. And we have a website at www.taxaccountingplus.com. And we are not afraid to answer questions. So they always hate it when I say this, but if you have a question, don't be afraid to give us a call, and we'll answer your question.
And always tune in, and maybe your question will be answered on Tax Tip Tuesday. So you guys you have a blessed day. Rick, thanks for joining me, and we're going to be right back, folks. You're listening to Conservative Cat. Okay. See you later, Rick Johnson.
Thank you. Hey, I wanted you to know that to celebrate the good weather, I wore a bright orange shirt today just for you.
Oh, that's great. Well, I love it. That's awesome. You have a blessed day. We'll see you
All right.
soon.
All right.
Bye. All right, folks, you're listening to Conservative Cat. We'll be right back in just a little bit. Woo! Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk Bloomington normal. Yes, it's going to probably get up to 60 degrees today. 60. So I want to talk a little bit about Dan Bongino here. On Truth Social, this is what Donald Trump wrote. He says, great news for law enforcement and American justice. Dan Bongino, a man of incredible love and passion for our country, has just been named the deputy director of the FBI by the man who will be the best ever director, Kash Patel. Okay, so Kash Patel named him the deputy director. This is so exciting. Dan Bongino is taking a major pay cut for this. Okay, so like Donald Trump, he's making a sacrifice. Like everybody always talks about Donald Trump and they say, I mean, the guy's like approaching, I think he's approaching 80. He's elderly, okay, has billions of dollars. Doesn't need this 2 assassination attempts on his life, none of this. But he's making a sacrifice for his country, and Dan Bongino is doing the same thing. He actually got into politics. If you listen to Dan Bongino's show, which he's going to be off the air in just a couple of weeks, folks. Don't know what we're going to do with that time slot yet. As soon as I know, I will let you know. But he's going to be done, early to mid March. But he got his kind of start in politics, went into politics because he saw and he observed what Barack Obama did behind the scenes. Okay. And I've talked about Barack Obama and the corruption. It all started right here in Illinois. It's that smoke-filled room with the good old boys. And they do the Michael Madigan type politics where, hey, I scratch your back if you scratch my back kind of thing. Okay. So he didn't like what he saw with Barack Obama. And this inspired Dan Bongino to make a difference. And this is why he launched the largest ever podcast, I would say pretty, if not the largest, one of the most successful largest podcasts, one of the many successful podcasts. But he's going to be working alongside, Attorney General Pam Bondi, Director Patel, for fairness, justice, law and order, and he is going to bring it all back to America, and he's going to do it quickly. Congratulations, Dan Bongino. And people are saying that he's not qualified because he's a podcaster or whatever. This makes absolutely no sense, okay? The left or whoever is criticizing him for his so-called lack of experience or saying that he wiggled his way into power here, that is not true, okay? Number one. Number two, because he's very credentialed. He was a Secret Service agent. It's going to be interesting to see how he takes on a leadership role because he's never really had a leadership role outside of his podcast. I mean, just recently, I think that they purchased like an old Burger King to build out this studio, this multi-million-dollar probably studio. And he's so successful in producing this podcast. Okay, so he definitely has had a leadership role of some kind, but he didn't wiggle his way into power. He is an experienced individual and he cares about the country. And what's more is that he wants to sacrifice his pay and his life to serve and be a public servant. This is the actual definition of a public servant, much like Donald Trump being an actual definition of a public servant, where there's an actual sacrifice made to get into stuff like this. Okay. So, Sam Brinton, if you want to talk about no experience, let's talk about no experience. Okay. You have to apply this standard equally. Sam Brinton literally was like the nuclear, whatever guy, nuclear program, which is insane to me. But look at Sam Brinton. He had no credentials, no nothing. He served in the Department of Energy's office of nuclear energy. Okay. And he was caught stealing a woman's suitcase in a Minneapolis airport. And he was using the contents of the suitcase for over a month. Okay. So this is so weird. I mean, this individual, he had admitted out loud with his mouth that he had suicidal ideation in his life. Prior to getting this role, you want to talk about somebody who shouldn't be serving in nuclear engineering for the government, the federal government. It's this guy, okay? He was not credentialed at all. He served in, I think he launched the Trevor Project, which is an LGBTQ youth organization. Again, has nothing to do with the nuclear program run by the government. So you want to talk about no credentials. It's this guy, Sam Brinton. All right, I got to take a quick break, but you're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. All right. Go ahead, smash that like button, share this out with your friends. We're going to come back. Good choice picking Dan Bongino. Yeah, very good choice. I think that is a fantastic choice. Dan Bongino, he's got a wonderful wife and kids. And what's really sad about like the left is they'll say that they're public servants, but they never really give anything up. They always just take way more money. He's taking a pay cut to do this job. So he's not getting into government to make more money. He's going to actually take a pay cut. Here's what Donald Trump said on Truth Social. Another aspect of Dan Bongino that I think is very important is great wife Paula and his two wonderful daughters who truly love their dad. What an incredible job Dan will do. Now, Dan, we all know that he's got cancer or had cancer, beat it. Does he really need the stress? Does he really need the pay cut? No. But he's going to be a public servant. And, that's a pretty different like this is a significant difference between the Biden administration, people in the Biden administration. A lot of these individuals are taking pay cuts. Okay, Pete Hegseth, I'm sure he made way more doing Fox News. Okay, and it's kind of like when I look at this, I mean, that's the true definition of a public servant, somebody who's sacrificing something. A lot of these individuals that Biden hired, they couldn't get, I mean, how much money did the Trevor Project really pull in? He launched this campaign for the probably a lot. They probably got government dollars. But without like doing anything, they get the money. Okay. People within the Biden administration and without having any kind of an experience, they wind up getting government dollars. And here's Dan Bongino, worked his way through Rumble, through the radio, and has had a successful career, and is taking a pay cut, 100% going to be taking a pay cut to be serving this country. And you don't see Democrats entering politics to make less money. They enter politics and they make more money. Look at Chelsea Clinton. She didn't even really work in government, okay? But she was collecting, I think, $80,000 a year via your tax dollars through the USAID funding, which is insane, okay, through that program. He wants to make a difference in our country, no doubt, yeah. Suitcase thief in charge of nukes. Why not? Yeah. And that's what I'm saying, the left, they'll say that they have all these credentials. I think that the suitcase thief did have like some sort of undergraduate in nuclear mechanical engineering with a nuclear engineering focus from Kansas State University. Okay, so he had some graduate degrees. Like that doesn't really translate to experience. Okay, he had all these degrees, but he didn't go and he didn't actually work in that field, okay, in the engineering field in the private sector. He decided to launch a 50 bills, 50 states campaign with the Trevor Project. Oh, he didn't even launch the Trevor Project. This guy has literally done nothing. He launched one political campaign in coordination with the Trevor Project, which is an LGBTQ youth organization. And he tried to ban conversion therapy nationwide, okay, which wasn't even really happening. I don't understand. Conversion therapy doesn't happen. Okay. It's like writing a law for things that don't happen, and it's totally ridiculous. So he fought for that and he did that. Okay. But I mean, he didn't work really in the private sector from what I can tell with the engineering. He had all these degrees, which really doesn't, I don't give a damn about your degrees. That doesn't tell me you have experience. Okay. The experience that Dan has is he's run a very successful podcast and has made millions doing it. And that's all I really need to know is that he made money on his own and he didn't have to take taxpayer money. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. Yes, people say that Dan Bongino has no experience or that he weaseled his way into this position, which is just not true. He has plenty of experience, served as a Secret Service agent, loves this country, is actually making a sacrifice, okay, because he's taking pay cut for sure. And this is the definition of a public servant, okay? Leftists will love to tell you that they're public servants, but they actually get into the public sector for the money, okay? And they come out richer than they were before. Dan Bongino and Donald Trump, they are both sacrificing something that is the true definition of a public servant. Sam Brinton, For example, he was running the nuke program for the federal government, and he's the guy who stole a lady's suitcase at an airport and wore all of her clothes for a couple of months. He hasn't done anything with his life. Now he's got all kinds of degrees. I won't, disparage him at all, completely. He does have degrees in mechanical engineering and nuclear engineering with a nuclear engineering focus from Kansas State University. And then he went to Massachusetts Institute of Technology. But look, folks, the degrees don't really mean much. He didn't go into the private sector and actually worked as an engineer. Okay. Here's what he did with his time. Okay. With his life. Okay. He decided to launch a campaign with the Trevor Project. So I'm correcting myself. I said that he launched the Trevor Project. Not true. He didn't even do that. Okay. The Trevor Project is predatory. It preys on young kids going through puberty and tells them that they're LGBTQ. This is a youth organization. And he teamed up with that project to ban conversion therapy in 50 states. Okay. Conversion therapy wasn't happening, okay, in any state, really. So he worked to pretty much ban something that wasn't a problem. That's what he's done with his time in his life. So if anybody is not experienced, it was this guy who was serving and took a job in the Department of Energy office of nuclear energy. Okay. So he's not experienced. Dan Bongino has plenty of experience, and I'm excited to see who fills his slot for the radio. But yeah, he's great. Dan Bongino is from the radio to the White House. You guys have a blessed day. Bye-bye. I love you.